Right now, I'm selling this as a core exchange. You bring me your old core to buy a new one. I can also do repairs to yours, full rebuilds, upgrades. These 4L60s, I build them stronger than stock, but I don't build them for racing applications right now. I do, however, build 4L80s, and I have a couple that are in the works right now. And I can do a 4L80 video in the future if you're interested in seeing how I build a 4L80 to hold some power. So let's get started and I'll show you how this thing was built. This is what we started off with. Of course, these two are 4L80s, but our very first step, we pressure wash these and get all this grime and dirt off, all that oil from all them leaking main seals. This 4L60 belt housing, an example of one that's already gone through the first stage of washing. As you can tell, there's no more grease or mud on it. All that's been knocked off. After our initial wash, to get some of the big chunks and grime off, we go ahead and put it up here on the stand. We drop our pan and get all the fluid out, and we go ahead and break down the case. Take all the internal components out, take the bell housing off and the tail shaft off, and then we go ahead and give the case a bath. So this case is actually very, very clean right now. What you're seeing here is just fading in the aluminum staining from years and years of use. After we get everything degreased and cleaned, we go through and make sure there's nothing stripped on the case. We make sure the case is still good. We'll go through here and get all the sediment out because we don't want to leave anything in there when we rebuild it. It has to be perfectly clean. The number one failure on your 4L60 is your 3 to 4 clutch pack. Now there's two main causes of that. First main cause is your apply piston. Second one is your third gear accumulator. Now for your third gear accumulator, that's in here. It's this little check ball right here. Now that check ball has a habit of hammering out the seat and not sealing, and it leaks fluid in here in the case, which loosens up your band and burns up your clutches. So every time we check that check ball, and if it's bad, we pull it out and put a new one in every time. All Torrington and thrust bearings are checked for wear and shattering and replaced with new if needed. Every case gets a new bushing here. Every sun gear gets a new bushing here. This one has not been changed yet. And every pump gets new bushings. All other bushings are checked for fitment and wear and replaced if needed. Every unit gets new steels and new high energy frictions. These clutches are made by Alto. I also use Z-Pack in certain builds. We rebuild every pump on every transmission we do. We break them down. We resurface these with 3M. On the upgraded versions, we put in some new parts. No matter what, we rebuild it. On the upgraded ones, we put in a full pump kit, not just the rings. We then put new Teflon seals in, new bushings. We clean all internal parts. On the upgraded one, we put in an upgraded Sonax boost valve that will raise line pressure under load when you need it. We put in a new seal for the filter. After we get everything back together, we align this with a tool, and we even seal off this right here because this goes to your vent and we don't want any fluid coming out your vent on the top. We of course put a new front main seal on every unit. So once we got the pump built, this is the silicone I told you about, just a light coating, because this is line pressure here, and then the very next one up goes to your vent. So if it leaks even a little bit, you're going to spray fluid right out the vent of your transmission. When rebuilding the forward input drum, we always use an upgraded dual cage forward spray. It's much more durable and lasts longer. The 3 to 4 clutch boost springs are checked every time and replaced every time when they're bad. This delays the 3 to 4 clutch coming on when the 2 to 4 band is applied. And if they're worn out, it'll burn up your 3 to 4 clutch. Every single clutch pack that is put together is checked for in-play and adjusted if it's too tight or too loose. All components are air checked for operation and leaks. The clutches in the reverse input drum rarely go bad, but we rebuild them every time. Check the bushings. We put new ones in this one already. And we check the surface for flatness before we rebuild it. This one has a little staining, but it's perfectly flat. We use a straight edge to tell. We check for the fingers here coming out so you don't cut your case. And if they're good, we go ahead and rebuild them. This is where your 2-4 band applies, so that's why these tend to bow in here. After every sun gear is inspected for cracks and wear, we knock out the bushing and replace it every time with a standard or a Sonax wide bushing for a little bit extra. We replace the thrust washer if it's 99 or older, and the bearing if it's 2000 or newer every time. For a small upcharge, we can upgrade you to a new hub that'll accept a bearing as well. That squeaking is the sign of a healthy roller clutch. Every unit gets a new high energy band, even if the old band was okay. After assembly, hinge play is always checked and adjusted or shimmed if needed. Next, we install a brand new Corvette second and fourth gear, but we don't just install it. First, we put it in without seals and we test the travel, because if it's too loose, it'll burn up third gear clutch pack. If it's too tight, it'll burn up the band. A lot of times bushings get skipped. New tail housing bushing and new rear seal every time. There's a seal here on the output shaft that I replace every time. That prevents fluid from leaking out of your yoke. We don't want any leaks, so we put in a new selector shaft seal every time as well. Every accumulator gets reworked. The 1 to 2 accumulator seen here gets resurfaced in here, cleaned. We get rid of all plastic pistons in the transmission. These are prone to cracking. We replace them with a heavy duty aluminum one with a tall shank so it can't wobble on that shaft. And I'll actually, from the factory, they sit down a bit. I put a spacer to bring it all the way up to the top. If wanted, we can actually limit the travel of this too to make 1 to 2 a snappier shift. I don't normally do that. As we talked about before, the 2 to 3 accumulator is actually built into the servo, and it gets a Corvette servo. So that's the modification to the 2 to 3 accumulator. The 3 to 4 accumulators here, once again, if it has plastic, we get rid of it. And I actually block this accumulator off on every transmission, whether you want performance or not. This just eliminates any fluid slipping past, and also it holds stronger in 4th gear because, quite frankly, you don't need an accumulator in 4th gear. It's impossible to shift too hard into 4th, so we just block this off. So all separator plates are inspected. This is where the check balls tend to wear them out. They hammer out some of these holes. If it's bad, it gets replaced. If it's not too bad, it gets reused and repaired. And we replaced 3 of these metal check balls out of the 8 that we encounter with HD plastic. That way they don't hammer out the separator plate for you. We then match the gaskets to make sure we put in the right separator plate gaskets. Once we fully disassembled, fully cleaned, fully reassembled the valve body, checked all electronic parts, the solenoids, put new seals on them, replace them if needed. We put a Sonax pinless forward accumulator in here, so we don't have to worry about any plastic cracking or any leaks past the pin, because there's no longer a pin or a shaft on there. And we went ahead and blocked off the pulse width modulator, if I can point at the right one. So it will now be an on and off on your torque converter lockup. No more modulating on and off all the time, just on or off, which will save the life of your converter and your transmission. As we get ready to install the valve body, I went ahead and put the last 7 check balls in. As you can see, these are the original metal ones. In these 3 here, these are the ones that tend to get hammered out, especially this one here. The check ball can actually get stuck if it hammers out the separator plate under this gasket. So these 3 we replace with a very, very hard plastic, but it does not slam into the plate as hard as the metal, so it will last much longer. 2-wheel drive units with the sleeve here. Some earlier ones in Camaros don't have that. 4-wheel drives don't have this, they don't get greased, but the 2-wheel drive with this sleeve, with this seal we replaced, we pack this with a heavy synthetic grease for the drive shaft. We clean and inspect the full harness, all connectors, put a new O-ring here, make sure it didn't leak fluid. All solenoids are checked for operation and ohmed out, make sure they're still good and cleaned. The pressure switch, if it's an older style like this one with the open face, we throw it out and put in the new style. The new style has a plastic cover, and basically what goes wrong with these is metal from your clutch material and stuff like that gets down in here and it can short out and it can put codes on your truck. Once all electronics and everything has been checked, new pressure switch installed, everything's been torqued to spec, new filter seal, new filter, we clean, make sure this surface is clean, put on a new gasket, and then we move to the pan. The pan gets a full deep clean magnet installed, and we go over the entire gasket surface with a brass wire wheel to give it a little bit of texture. To seal the gasket and to make sure there's no pieces of the old gasket or any debris left on there, and then we torque it down. One of the last steps is taping off everything important and giving it a coat of quality high temperature engine paint. Alright, last steps include a new lockup O-ring, pre-lubed. Make sure this is on there when you install your transmission, or you're gonna have a heck of a leak. Lockup won't work without that. And a new dipstick seal. Stick just a little bit of lube in there. This is made for transmissions. That way your dipstick will slide in there nice and easy and not leak at all. And of course, slap my decal on there. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed it. This is my first video I've done, this way anyway. So I apologize if it wasn't the best video. I left a lot of steps out just because I didn't want to make the video hours long. But I didn't skip any steps in the build. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want to see anything else, let me know. And be sure to check us out on Facebook. I just started a page, Douglas Guy Transmissions, and we're out of Lincoln, Nebraska. So give us a follow. Hope to hear from you soon.